Today's episode of Northern Lights is presented by North Star Law Group, a trusted partner for small businesses in Minnesota's legal cannabis industry. Whether you've already applied for a license or just getting started, attorney Jen Riza and her team can help you build a compliant business, identify and navigate risks, put together an application, and keep you informed about the ever-changing Minnesota cannabis landscape. Are you ready to add North Star to your team? Visit northstarlaw.com/cannabis and let North Star Law Group guide you through confidently opening your doors. Again, that's northstarlaw.com/cannabis. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Northern Lights. I'm your host, Tanner, joined today by Marcus. Hey, man. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Happy to be back here. Dabbler Depot Studio here at the Seed and Sesh off on Payne Avenue. It's a good time hanging out here. We're also here with our buddy Jordan. Howdy, Jordan. How's it going?
Pretty good.
Great.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. Well, so, Marcus, we've got a ton to dig into today. But first, I got to say, do you see anything new on our set today? Anything that wasn't here last week?
I see the clone carrier.
Oh, yeah, those are cool. We got some beverages, but oh, shit, yeah, they're right in the middle there. Cannabis Caucus.
Wow, nice frame.
10,000 Minnesotans for full legalization. Yeah, that we're cleaning out the office, getting it a little, it's the college. We sort of build up some stuff. That was one of the things that I found in the office, and I went, oh, we gotta bring this into the studio.
Nice.
It's a throwback to some of the early 2018, 2019 days of figuring out what is legalization. Look, we got this shirt too.
I have too many of these shirts.
That's okay. So I think the max I ever had of those shirts was 3, and now down to just the 1. So we'll have to get in touch. But yeah, I mean, it's a fun group. It's cool being here in Minnesota, looking at how far we come, and we've got a lot of continued activism that we're going to be talking about today. Not necessarily around cannabis, but a lot around mushrooms.
Yeah.
We've got an interview.
Mushrooms yesterday.
There we go. Then it's a perfect person to be.
And the day before.
Perfect person to be talking about it then. Yeah. We're going to be talking a little bit about OCM during this episode. We're going to be talking about a deep dive into what a micro license look like. Someone requested online. We'll be digging into that a little bit later. Talking about what could a micro license look like in Minnesota. We got Jason Tarasek on the episode a little bit later, and then finally we're going to be ending out with our high notes. But first, we had some sort of big news this week. I mean, maybe big news. We now officially have a presidential candidate, someone who's running for president in Minnesota for one of the major parties, call out legalization as something that they hope to do as president. Kamala Harris this week said no one should go to jail for smoking weed, saying that we need to legalize recreational marijuana because it breaks down unjust barriers that hold black men and other Americans back. And she wants to make sure that black Americans have opportunities to succeed as the marketplace takes shape. I mean, Marcus, what's your initial reaction to seeing that come out?
I mean, I'd never dug into her record as a prosecutor in, I think, the Bay Area, San Francisco area, but I've seen things on the internet, and you have to, you probably need to fact check everything on the internet, but I wouldn't be a stretch to believe that her office was involved in prosecuting people for cannabis. I mean, it was California.
Oh yeah.
So, but redemption is usually a possibility for most people. So I'm glad to hear that, but I'm curious when it will actually happen.
Yeah, totally fair. Yeah, I think it's neat having at least a major party candidate come out and say, not just that we need to decriminalize, not just that we need to end the war on drugs, but explicitly legalize. And obviously it's just one sentence, but maybe legalize with an emphasis towards social equity, maybe.
Maybe. I mean, but the thing is, as we've seen in Minnesota, we don't know what social equity will really look like until all the licenses are distributed.
Oh, yeah.
Because, she's saying that just like everybody was saying legalization is a racial justice issue, but when it comes to licensing, it's a race-blind thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, almost everybody I know, including people in this company, they thought that I would automatically be a social equity applicant.
Absolutely.
Just because I'm a black guy from North Minneapolis dealt with police and shit. But no.
Yeah.
So I don't think that rhetoric is going to translate into like equitable opportunities in the industry.
For sure. And I mean, I thought it was tough to see legalization pass through the DFL-controlled Minnesota legislature. Now imagine the federal Congress having to look at what legalization looks like. I don't think we're going to get something that is as we'd like to see federal legalization look like.
But, you know, when you ask me this, I'm wondering, like, what does it look like when all 50 states are able to produce cannabis products, and then we have, like, we're able to get cannabis from all over the country in a legal market, you know? I mean, what's that going to do for prices? I think it's going to be super tough for small cultivators, small manufacturers to compete, you know, because of economies of scale.
Totally.
But it will be good for consumers because the prices will be lower in the future. Mm-hmm. Because as we know, we've been paying prohibition taxes all these years on the cannabis that we buy. You know, we can't buy flower now yet. Mm-hmm. So people are still buying legacy market cannabis in Minnesota until stores are allowed to sell it.
Wait, what? No, I'm just kidding. No, dude, absolutely. We are definitely in that time where it's like we all have cannabis. Where is it coming from?
Exactly.
And where it's always come from.
Exactly. A lot of it's coming. I mean, now it's coming from other states beyond the West Coast. But yes, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. I think it's neat that even if we don't see legalization pass under the next president, it's cool at least having, you know, Kamala Harris comes from California, a legal adult use state. Tim Walz comes from Minnesota, a legal quasi-adult use state.
Legalish.
Trump comes from Florida, a state that could become legal adult use this election.
Right.
And J.D. Vance comes from Ohio, a state that is adult use. So
Yeah.
that means 3 of the 4 candidates for major party office that are on that presidential ticket, they come from a state with adult use cannabis. And they're hopefully bringing those policies to the White House.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm just wondering, like, I mean, we got to really champion craft cannabis and, you know, support like small businesses.
Oh, yeah, because that sentence that I read at the beginning about what she hopes to do with legal cannabis, that is all that has been put out right now. Like, there's not clarity around what would legalization look like, how would we implement it, what the timeline is, any of that sort of information. It's just 3 words on a piece of paper saying legalize recreational marijuana, which I don't know.
It sounds good. I mean, the thing that's scary to me is that at the federal level with Congress, local people we have almost no influence in the process. I mean, the people who have the capacity, the money, the resources, the mobility to travel to D.C., to have staff out there walking the halls of Congress, those are all like, that's big money usually.
Oh, yeah.
There's not a lot of grassroots people who can do more than a field trip to Congress.
Totally. If you think it's hard to influence the people in St. Paul,
Yeah.
imagine Washington. Like, our ability to impact what that looks like, I think, is slipping out of our hands more and more every day.
Yeah, it's almost hopeless, to be honest, and I'm an eternal optimist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to give a plug to that at the beginning. It's not really like Minnesota cannabis news, but I think as Minnesota continues to evolve our industry, figure out what does that micro license look like, how do these businesses prop up, it's like you said, that interstate commerce is going to be a big impact on local business.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. I mean, that's why a lot of the small businesses are going to have to do a good job. You know, we're going to have some solid trade associations that are really like Minnesota-centric, really small business centric, to help educate the consumers, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100% agree.
Like, don't buy that fucking Budweiser type of cannabis. Buy the, you know?
Yeah, I think it's coming into Minnesota
the prize
more and
type
more.
of cannabis.
Yeah, totally. The modest, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Modest, exactly. Our favorite.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see, you know, when legalization is brought up in the federal halls of Congress, how does it end up coming out?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of dysfunctional government. How's that for a transition? Let's talk a little bit about OCM. So there was an article that came out a little bit earlier this week that looked at some employees that used to work for the Office of Cannabis Management.
Yeah.
Before that, working for the Department of Health, and seen a little glimpse into what that culture in the office looks like. Now we're going to talk about what the article said, and then we're going to give our opinions on it, because I have a lot of opinions. So we had this article interviewed a former employee of Minnesota OCM. She transitioned over from the Department of Health. She previously worked to certify medical patients. They would turn in their form to the state. She was part of a team of 8 that helped to review those, get them processed. When I was first applying for my med card back about 2 years ago, it was a pretty quick turnaround. It took about a week to get the information back, and now I'm able to go into stores, buy cannabis, whatever be it. Well, unfortunately, in Minnesota, under OCM, it has been taking a little bit longer, sometimes upwards to the 30-day maximum that they legally can take to issue that license.
Wow.
And according to this interview with Kim Cry, who's a former Department of Health employee, it's because of the culture at OCM. It's because they previously were allowed to do work from home, and now that's not being honored. It's because they previously were, just a little bit more supported by their team, and now it looks like that support is coming to an end. The direct quote that she had is, they told us, hey, you're coming into our house, you're going to play by our rules.
Wow.
Yeah. So OCM didn't have a ton to say about this. They released a statement saying that the transition from the Department of Health to the Office of Cannabis Management just triggered natural attrition that happens anytime there's transitions in an organization. But yeah, not good to see articles about OCM coming out, not about the advancements of licensure, not about the work they're doing to issue grants or, implement social equity provisions, but that their employees don't feel like they're supported.
Who published the article?
Fox 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know local Fox 9 is not like National Fox Entertainment News,
but let's dig into that, because I've been waiting all week to share my opinions about this, because I've had people ask me man, that article from OCM looks pretty bad. I've seen people sharing it on LinkedIn, people posting this shows OCM can't run their shit. And to those people I say, because I read the article and I read one employee who complained that they didn't honor her work from home request, which I'm not saying isn't good. They should be doing that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't tell me anything. That tells me that one employee was unhappy with her employer and she quit and now is going to the news. I don't really hear anything about mismanagement of OCM. I don't hear anything about, they require people to do all this arbitrary work that's just holding back whatever be it. It's just they're not letting you work from home.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like to me, that it was one disgruntled employee.
Who said she was and let's give credit, she said she was part of a team of 8 that people kept leaving because they were unhappy. It dwindled down to 3. But, man, they ran this article as OCM doesn't know how to run their stuff. They can't run a state agency. And it's just one disgruntled employee.
I think they're doing a tough job standing up an organization from scratch. And there's a lot of time pressure. There's a lot of public scrutiny.
Yeah.
I'm not on the inside, but I think they're doing a decent job.
Absolutely. Yeah, we should say none of us work for OCM. We don't have any insights into this. But they seem to be continuing to do their work. Yeah, it's taken a long time, but I don't think it's cultural mismanagement of the organization. I think it's government work,
If the social equity pre-approval license deadline was August 12th, was that right? Mm-hmm. And what is today?
Yeah, we're sitting here October 18th, so we're 60-some days out from that.
So that means that they reviewed 1,800 plus applications in 2 months.
Yeah.
Because I heard 2 days ago they started issuing out deficiency notices.
For sure.
Which means if your license had some missing pieces, you have some time to correct that. Mm-hmm. So if they reviewed 1,800 applications in a short period of time, that 2 months, they're doing pretty decent.
Yeah. And we've continued to see draft rules come out. We've continued to see, would we like more communication on what's being done? Sure. Yeah. I think we all would love to get daily updates on what did OCM do today. But are we at least getting a picture into how this state agency is starting to prop it up? Little bits, yeah, for sure.
And I mean, they've sought, public input, on the first draft of the rules, and it sounds like they're going to be looking for more public input on subsequent rounds, and that they're actually listening. When when advocates have good ideas, like they'll agree with it.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, not everything, but
totally. But it feels
trying.
weird to have us be in the position of being like, nah, state agencies, like, trust them. But also, I think, at least from what they've done thus far, like, keep it rolling. I don't know.
I mean, in my experience with government, it's usually the politicians that are like the craziest ones. There's in certain departments, Department of Corrections, shit like that. There's definitely going to be some inhumane people because it's an inhumane system. But there's a lot of very professional state government employees. I mean, and I've met people in different city governments. They take their job serious and they do the best they can.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to champion government, but I always hear these unfair, uninformed opinions from the public about different public work. And I'm like, do you even know what the fuck you're criticizing?
Yeah, totally agree.
But yeah.
And that was my thought anytime I saw someone share this article and say, like, this proves it. We got to get Charlene out. It's like, well, I think we should get a full-time director in, but I don't know if it's because, Kim's upset that she can't have her work from home. I think maybe other things.
Yeah. And we did go in on OCM, and they're aware of it when they made that first directive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm not saying OCM has been perfect, but man, this is not the thing to get upset about.
Nah.
All right. Well, let's leave that behind. I just had to touch on that. It's been like wildfire this week of everyone in the industry sharing this article, talking about, man, look at this. This proves it. And I don't know. I don't feel like it proved much to me, but make up your own opinions.
I mean, it makes me think of the way that all the at-home work happened during COVID, and a lot of people got used to that. And I think it's a great thing, But just because they made her come to the office, that's a reason to quit?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. All right. Well, we're going to leave that one. If you have opinions on this piece, email me, tanner@mncannabiscollege.org. We'd love to hear your opinions. If you have favorable ones, put them in the comments. If you don't, shoot me an email. All right, let's move on and talk about another story here. Now, we've sort of got a 1-2 punch here of talking not about cannabis, but about mushrooms and looking at plant medicines that are not cannabis, but that are getting advanced recognition, both here in Minnesota and nationally. The first news article that I want to talk about here in Minnesota is looking at our Psychedelics Taskforce. So remember, this was created back during the 2 legislative sessions ago. It was a board that's supposed to look at what should psychedelic policy look like here in Minnesota. I remember sitting up in the Senate chamber as they were passing or finalizing House File 100 and hearing mentions from other activists there that the Psychedelic Task Force measure had moved through the omnibus bill, and we've got it. They've been slow, to say the least.
Yeah.
But we had their first recommendation come out this week, and it looks like they are going to be recommending that lawmakers here in Minnesota should decriminalize the use and possession of personal amounts of psilocybin mushrooms, sometimes called magic mushrooms or psychedelic mushrooms.
Yeah.
Marcus, what are your thoughts on that? Just sort of the high note of that.
Well, I support it. This is part of ending the drug war. Stop criminalizing people for wanting to have some cognitive liberty, some freedom to alter their mind with substances. Like, there's no reason to criminalize people for that. So yeah, I mean, I used to work with some of the people that were involved with this, and I know the chair of the Psychedelic Medicine Taskforce. I mean, the reality is that, within the mental health world, within the world of therapy, a lot of these mental health drugs are ineffective for a lot of people. And some of these psychedelic drugs have proven to have a lot of therapeutic potential. So this is why this is being advanced, not just for the decriminalization, but because it creates some opportunities for the medical world to have some more effective tools to treat, mental health issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was cool was seeing that task force take it sort of a step further and not just recommending that it be decriminalized, which is an important thing that we hope moves forward, but also that we should set up a program that funds further research and perhaps even has a state-regulated therapeutic program where people can go and, under supervision, get access to some of these plant medicines that long have been helpful for people in a variety of ways.
Yeah, the thing, though, from my perspective is that people shouldn't be limited to accessing these things through a medical system.
For sure.
Because a lot of people don't want to go to their doctor and get a prescription for some synthetic mushrooms, because that's what they're going to give you.
Yeah.
They're not going to give you the mushrooms that I ate last night that come from the ground.
Well, and the cost of stuff like that has been so, we've seen other states, Colorado, Oregon, 2 states that have moved forward with sort of what does medical psilocybin looks like. But you want to have a session, it's going to cost you $800 minimum. And that's just not, you and I both know, not the cost of what those mushrooms really take to cultivate and get to people.
No, I mean, the last ounce of mushrooms I got was like $150. And that lasts quite a long time. Man.
Well, if you want to get some of that, hit up No, I'm just kidding.
No,
but
don't call me.
It is cool seeing this move forward. Minneapolis a couple of years ago moved forward with, should we decriminalize in the city? It's one of the lowest priorities. The police are not supposed to be really enforcing psilocybin-type crimes. It would be awesome to see Minnesota statewide move forward with something similar, if not even more open than that.
Yeah, I was involved with that. We got Mayor Jacob Fry to issue an executive order. So thank you for that work. Thank you, Peter, for helping.
Yeah.
That's his policy guy.
And it's been cool, similar to cannabis, which started as municipalities decriminalizing, and then states decriminalizing, and then states legalizing.
Yeah.
Similar psychedelic mushrooms and other plant medicines seem to be taking a different but similar path of states experimenting with what does medical look like, states experimenting with what does decriminalization look like. And hopefully, like you said, it leads to a world where people are able to get these medicines, not through having to pay hundreds of dollars for a clinic or having to do supervised treatment, but instead being able to find ways to use them in their own life.
Yeah, I mean, because they're going to legalize some of these drugs, and there's going to be a lot of money made by the medical community. I mean, this stuff is going to make, or MDMA is going to make some people billions of dollars,
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever tried Molly?
Oh, such a great question. I've actually not, no. I've heard a lot of great things about it. I've mostly tried to stick to, I've talked about my LSD use on here before. Mushrooms have been a big thing in my life, and cannabis, but haven't really gone much outside of that. But I've heard, mescaline people have talked about before is really providing a positive to their life. We're not here to encourage people to go out and try all these psychedelic drugs, but I think if you are someone that finds relief in your life or finds value or wellness in your life because of these, something that's currently illegal in Minnesota, decriminalization will maybe not gives you access to it, it at least removes a lot of that, the harms of having that. It's not dangerous to have mushrooms, it's dangerous to get caught with them.
Right. I mean, but if you take too much.
Ooh, all right. So we're going to take a short break on that.
Fuck around and find out.
Yeah. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about Marcus's mushroom use and look at a state that's moving forward with perhaps creating a system where people could go to a store and buy psychedelic mushrooms and other plant medicines in the not too distant future. So stick around for the break, and we'll be right back in just a second. Ready to kick off your home grow? We've got the perfect hookup for you. MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. They've got everything from fast flowering strains to unique hybrids, all ready for growing in Minnesota. And guess what? Our listeners get an exclusive deal. Use the code NL10 for a 10% discount on your entire order. Don't miss out and get started with the best seeds. Start your growth strong with MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Remember, NL10 for 10% off at MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Grab your seeds today. I just wish there was some way some way that I could tell people that I lived in Minnesota, that I liked cannabis, that I was a listener of the Northern Lights podcast. There is Northern Lights merch.
Dope.
You can get yours today. mncannabiscollege.org/Northern Lights. Get your shirts, get your mugs. Check it out. Get it all today. The religious exemption, while not absolute, has been really interesting to see. Peyote is another one that people are able to access, not through the legal schedule structure, but through, hey, this is something from the earth. It's spiritual to me. You're going to keep that from me? I think not.
But we didn't include peyote in the Minneapolis
No.
deprioritization thing because a lot of Native communities, they don't want that, like, because there's a lot of poaching that happens down there. I think it's like New Mexico, Arizona area.
For sure.
So it's like it could be an endangered plant.
Interesting.
So they don't want that mass produced and shit. So we respected that.
Absolutely. I think that's super fair.
You know, maybe one day I'll try peyote somewhere.
I grow San Pedro cacti. Have you ever grown or heard of San Pedro cacti before, Jordan?
No.
So San Pedro is a certain type of cacti. It doesn't look necessarily super different than one you'd see growing wild in Arizona or whatever be it. But it has mescaline. That's the active compound that it grows to try to prevent birds, other things from eating it. But we as people did something really cool, which is we went, oh, you make this thing that's supposed to make me sick? I sort of like that. And so now we can grow legally San Pedro cacti, not for their mescaline. That would be illegal. But you can grow them as just ornamental cacti.
Decor, yeah.
Absolutely. So they're pretty fun to grow. I am growing one. I bought it in Arizona at a flea mart. I then put it in my bag, brought it through TSA, brought it back to Minnesota. It's been growing here for a couple of years. But I think the plant medicines is something that is so innocuous around us that we might not even realize, oh, shit, that plant right there is producing something that when it interacts with my brain creates something out of this world.
Yeah. I mean, there's psychedelic mushrooms outside in certain places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, welcome to Minnesota. We've got some cool mushrooms that grow here. That's for sure. Well, on that note, we're back. Marcus, I want to tell you about a really cool measure that is being looked at, not in Minnesota, but out east in Massachusetts. Now, we were talking right before the break, about what could legal psilocybin access look like. And Massachusetts is providing a model that might be something that we'll see in the future. So their question 4, which is being voted on this November, so 17 days away, they will, if passed, it would create a Natural Psychedelic Substance Commission and Advisory Board that would regulate and license psychedelic substances. It would allow people to be able to open stores that sell these under regulations that this board creates. It would allow people over 21 years of age and older to grow, possess, and use personal amounts of psychedelic substances that include a variety of different plants and fungi. It's not just psilocybin, but we're seeing mescaline, a variety of others. So it's cool to see a legalization measure move forward. It would create an excise tax similar to cannabis we've seen in other states, 15% sales tax, which is a little steep, but 50% sales tax on all psychedelic substances. And it would allow people to go out and provide access to these types of plants. What are your thoughts on legal psilocybin access through a model similar to cannabis?
I mean, I like the idea of people having, safe legal access to the fungi. I call it sacred mushrooms.
For sure.
I mean, it can be very magical.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I love it because a lot of people don't have access to mushrooms because it's illegal, because it's not widely cultivated. I mean, there's people who will never find somebody they can get it from.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So legalization makes it more accessible. So I love it.
Mm-hmm. And I think so many people have learned, as the internet shares a lot of really helpful information. Growing mushrooms, not that challenging. We've talked about growing cannabis on the show before. Growing mushrooms, perhaps even easier. I
think the cubensis are so domesticated that they are relatively easy. But if somebody were to try to, cultivate some of the more exotic,
For sure.
you're probably not going to succeed.
Absolutely. Yeah, similar to taking a seed directly from, South Africa and bringing it to your tent indoors might not grow as well. Mushrooms, similar.
Yeah. But yeah, cubensis are very domesticated. And I think I have never done it myself, but I would like to learn how to cultivate it at home.
And allegedly, I don't know, Jordan, did you know you can get the spores online through the internet? They'll just send them to you in the mail.
I have seen that. I've never dabbled, but
coming soon to a future Northern Lights episode, you'll be able to watch months as the mushrooms grow. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll just set up a GoPro with it, like a time lapse, and it's like
there we go.
Like
that'd be fun.
The planet Earth type time lapse.
I'd watch that, and then it leads to a pretty cool thing at the end.
Just like 4 months condensed into 28 seconds.
Oh yeah. No, Marcus, don't flip the page because there's information on the next page that I want to poll you on. Jordan, you as well. What percentage in a poll that was completed on October 10th, so about a week ago, what percentage of registered voters in Massachusetts said that they would support this measure? So they support legalizing psilocybin.
So you want to guess?
Yeah, I want you to guess. What percentage of Massachusetts do you think supports this measure, according to a recent poll?
60%.
60%? All right, Jordan, what do you think?
That was where my mind was, but due to my contrarian nature, I'm going to say like less than 30%.
Okay. All right. Well, so you guys sort of, if you went to the middle of your two answers, you sort of found it. We're at 43% support, 43% oppose, and the rest just, they don't know.
They don't care.
I don't know. Undecided, if you will, but.
I mean, that measure is going to fail. I said 60% because that's what's needed for it to pass. But yeah,
I'd hope.
Ever the optimist.
Yeah, we've got almost a 5% margin of error on that poll as well. So we could have anywhere from 48% supporting it, all the way down to 30. So I'm hoping that we see it move forward, but the polling is not looking as strong there as it is in South Dakota, North Dakota, and Florida on their cannabis legalization measures.
But it usually takes multiple attempts for some of these ballot measures, And the thing is, it costs millions of dollars to campaign for these type of statewide, ballot measures.
Yeah, some people forget, but California's first attempt to legalize adult use cannabis didn't pass. It failed. They had to try again. And now, people would, of course, support legal cannabis in California. I'm excited for when mushrooms move to something similar, where it's not just like, wow, 40%, that's shockingly high, but more of course, people see that this policy isn't the way to be moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, it's because it's been illegal so long, a lot of people are ignorant about it, and a lot of ignorant people think that because it was illegal that it was justified, that it was there was a good reason when it wasn't.
Absolutely agree. Well,
so you got to educate the public. That's what those millions of dollars are for, educating the public. Like, this is something that we should do.
Absolutely. And I'm so happy that the airwaves of Massachusetts are now having that dialogue and discussion about, are plant medicines good for people to be having access to? Should mushrooms be something that people can buy in a store? And that there's people that say yes, and that's finding a voice, and that people are listening to ads that say, this is not about, going and having fun with your friends, which it could be, but it's also about ending the war on drugs. It's about creating a system that provides equitable access, not just prohibition.
Yeah, I mean, I think there should be more psychedelic bonfires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen some cool Instagram stories. All right. Well, before we take a short break here and get to our interview with Jason Tarasek, we had a question that was posted on our YouTube page. So shout out to all of our YouTube watchers. Thanks for being part of that viewing community. And it wanted us to dig a little bit deeper into what a micro license will be allowed to do in Minnesota. So at Cultivate Cannabis Co., thanks for commenting on our YouTube page. Thanks for being a subscriber. You asked us to dig deep into what a micro license will be allowed to do here in Minnesota. And while the rollout of that has been slow, Marcus, I'm excited to have you here because when we were at an event back in 2018, actually that Jason Tarasek came to, that you were wearing probably that exact same shirt at, we talked about this idea of a micro license. something that didn't really exist in other states, but something that would provide people easier access to starting up a business here in Minnesota. Now we are on the other side of that. The bill has passed. Obviously, these stores haven't opened, but we know what a micro business will look like here in Minnesota. So we're going to talk through each of them, and then I'd love to just get your general vibe checks on whether this was what you envisioned back in 2018, 2019, or whether this still needs a little tweaking as we move into the future. So a micro license, it allows you to grow cannabis up to 5,000 square feet of flowering indoor canopy or up to half an acre of outdoor, or both, it's looking like. It allows you to process either hemp or cannabis into concentrates, into edibles, into flower products, into vape carts, whatever be it. But it's looking like it's going to only be up to 3,000 pounds of cannabis per year that you can process, or the equivalent in concentrates. That's per draft rules, all subject to change, but puts that cap on how much is going to be able to flow through your lab. You're allowed to package and label flower, cannabis products, low-potency hemp products, and consumer goods. You're allowed to have one retail location that you're allowed to sell your products through. You're allowed to sell immature plants, seedlings, clones, all that fun stuff. And something that's pretty cool, you're going to be able to operate an establishment that permits the on-site consumption of edible cannabis products or lower potency hemp products. So we're not going to see like dab bars popping up all over the state. I know. But we will see, lounges, places where people can come and consume edibles in a cannabis forward event, in a cannabis forward space. Marcus, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the micro business license is the greatest chance for the state to experience some equity within the industry, before federal legalization.
Tell me, why do you feel like this is because I've heard this spiel before, so I apologize. You're telling me, and I don't know. But
no,
why
okay.
is it that people look at the micro license as that sort of the best route forward for small business entrepreneurs?
Well, there's only a $500 license fee, at least for the first time you apply, and that makes it accessible. And a lot of the earlier states, licensing was cost prohibitive. Like thousands and thousands of dollars just to apply for a license.
Oh, yeah.
And, so there's going to be a limit on the number of most of the other licenses, like the retail license. I think there's going to be 100 social equity retail and 100 of the general retail. So 200 retail licenses. And with the lottery system, I think there were like 500 people who applied for this first round of social equity.
Yeah.
But the first lottery is only going to award like 38. I mean, they'll go back and do some subsequent rounds, but there's limited opportunities for the licenses. And you and I have talked offline about all these people who have, a lot of knowledge and skills who may not end up getting a license because they don't win the lottery. Well, the existence of the micro business licenses gives all of those people some hope, So at this point, there's no limit on the micro licenses. So there's going to be a lot of people who may seek these other licenses, not win the lottery, which I hate lotteries, but they still have a chance to create a business. And the cannabis industry is a very difficult industry to operate in. So if you think that most businesses in every industry fail, I mean, there's going to be a high fatality rate in cannabis, just to be real. But this gives people an opportunity to at least try. Because there's a lot of people who may have operated in the legacy market, or they're from Minnesota and they went out into adult use markets in other states and they want to come home to do business here, where it'll be better, hopefully. I think so. But yeah, so this gives people hope. It gives me hope. Yeah. Like if we don't win that lottery, this is a way for us to ensure that we can still play the game.
Totally. It's not you going around the state and opening up a bunch of store locations. It's not you being able to process tons and tons of cannabis every year, but it gives people that entry point to the market. If you want to start a business, like you said, $500 in a dream is sort of what it takes to go out and be able to figure out how am I going to start up this business.
Yeah. So I met with someone from OCM recently, the community outreach person, Ron Milliken.
Yeah, shout out to Ron.
Shout out to her. And that's where I was emphatic that the micro business is the best chance for there to be real equity, because the reality is, I mean, the social equity licensing may not really be equitable. What if it's a bunch of rich veterans? Is that equity?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. Or what if it's a bunch of out-of-state businesses?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that equity? No, I totally agree with you. So here's a question for you. If you could, wave a magic wand, somehow make a tweak to the legislation, what kind of things do you think micro businesses should be allowed to do that currently, under how it's written, they can't? I saw you giving a thumbs down earlier to one specifically. I mean, what kind of things would you change about it?
I mean, I understand that Minnesota has this Clean Indoor Air Act, and I do respect it. But with cannabis, I think that there should be some consumption spaces allowed that, you should require some proper ventilation, but I think at least half of cannabis consumers are smokers. And a lot of people like to dab. A lot of people don't like edibles. So I think that there should be some type of tweaking to that.
100% agree.
So that we can go and smoke just like people can go drink.
For sure. And
or dab.
I agree with you on the Clean Indoor Air Act. We're like, am I happy I can go to like TGI Fridays or whatever and not have tobacco smoke in the air?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Would I like to be able to go to a cannabis forward 21 plus business and be allowed to consume cannabis? Yeah, I absolutely would. There has to be an in-between there that isn't unsafe for the public, but also doesn't make me go outside in January to consume cannabis the way I want to.
Exactly. It's 15 degrees below zero, and I got to smoke outside.
Yeah, we're
Call me
Minnesota.
Mr. Shivers.
California, Arizona, fine. They can get by having people consume outdoors. We in Minnesota, I think we have to be creative. We got to figure out some solution that allows people to have access without having to always just like step outside every single time.
There's ways to create some ventilation or some type of way to like reduce the smoke that'll fill the room. But it's like if you're a cannabis smoker and you're going to a cannabis consumption lounge, you're not going to be bothered like somebody who in the past had to go to a restaurant and deal with cigarette smoke when they might be allergic.
Absolutely.
It's not the same.
Absolutely. Should people be able to light up inside of like your top 10 liquors? Maybe not. But if it's a cannabis forward business, like right here in the Dabbler Depot Seed and Sesh, like, would it be a huge crime if people were consuming cannabis in here? I think no. And I think we need a change of regulations that allows that.
I mean, we've been to a lot of cannabis events, before legalization. And I've hosted events. And it's true. If you have a small space and you got 40 people smoking, that's probably too much smoke for some people.
For sure.
So, you should make sure that these places have some airflow.
Yeah. There has to be a middle ground. And I think that's what I'm curious to see. What could the conversation at the legislature look like? Because we're not the only people having this conversation. A lot of people are trying to figure out, it's October, soon to be November, soon to be December, soon to be snow outside. We'd all love to hold on to the warm weather, but it's fading fast. And
right.
It's not too bad this time to go outside and hit the Puffco, but middle of the night in January, I'm not as happy about going outside. Not my favorite.
I'm also thinking like how long will this last? Because are they going to eventually put a limit on the micro businesses? I know that most of them are not going to be able to succeed because competition, there's going to be winners and losers.
Yeah.
But what happens in 2 years? I mean, I know that cities can limit the number of dispensaries in their area, but what if there are so many businesses that? I mean, I guess the free hand of the market is going to make that.
And that's what I think cities are trying to decide between. You have places like Minneapolis and St. Paul that put a restriction between cannabis dispensaries. You can't have another one within 500 feet or whatever. And then you have cities that are taking more of an open approach, saying, capitalism, baby, the market will figure it out.
It was funny. I was in Massachusetts like a month or two ago, and I was driving through Great Barrington, Massachusetts, and on the right side of the highway there was this pretty little dispensary, but it was like out of business. And then when I drove back, I was like, "Oh, that's why it's out of business, because the shop across the street was popping."
For sure.
And I'm sorry, I don't like laugh at people losing, but I mean, it is a competition.
Totally. Well, and it's I think I talked about this on the show, but I went to Denver not that long ago, and it was the first time that I ever saw a closed dispensary before. Like, I saw a lot open, but it was the first time I ever seen like boards in the windows like closed up. But exactly like you said, there was a poppin' one right across the street, and it's not that people don't want cannabis. It's just that, you know, we can only have so many cannabis businesses before.
Right.
You know, I can only smoke so much weed, guys. I can't buy at every shop. Can't do it.
Right. I mean, and the reality is, a lot of people who are entrepreneurs are not employable people, so they're probably not good employers either. So they're going to be trying to pay people poverty and treat them like shit, and expect them to have morale and not have high turnover, and just they're going to have terrible customer service, and there's going to be all these people who are just trying to cut corners and buy cheap herbs so they can think they're making a profit, and then the customers will be like, "This place has terrible fucking cannabis."
Totally. And that's why I'm excited for that statewide tour of going from microbusiness to microbusiness to microbusiness, and seeing some places where it's going to be a unique experience unlike anywhere else in the country, and then other places it's going to be maybe not so great. And that's business, you know? I'm excited to see it all play out here in Minnesota.
I mean, I'm a tough critic. You know, I try to keep a lot of my opinions to myself because I'm harsh in my judgment. But like the way that I like to do it. I do. I like to disparage. I like to disparage bad fucking businesses. By like, for a dispensary, I'm like, okay, this place has smoke shop energy.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not saying there's no good smoke shops, but usually there's often rude ass people running those places that don't know shit about the products, don't care about it, and they're just like trying to collect your money and don't give a fuck if you come back. Like, there's gonna be dispensaries like that. They're not gonna give you a good consumer shopping experience. You're not gonna want to come back, and yeah, maybe those businesses should fail.
Totally. Well, so Cultivate Cannabis Co., thanks for dropping that question in. We love answering questions on here. But Marcus, here's a question for you just as we sort of head to a break here in just a minute. What's the best dispensary experience that you've had? Is there like a shop or like one that stands out for me is a shop that is fortunately no longer around called Botanico. It used to exist in Denver. Botanico. And they had like private rooms that you'd walk in, you'd wait, and then you'd walk in and there'd be a bud tender in there. And the conversation was like, what have you liked smoking in the past? Oh, well, we've got this and this that it's similar. I've really been enjoying this. Much more of that like personal guidance, less of the smoke shop energy of what do you want? Here's the price. More of the how can I help you find what you're looking for? Yeah. What's been your favorite?
I mean, the funny thing is I haven't been to a dispensary in years. Like in the first years, because 2014 was when Colorado and then Washington State first did it. So like when I first started going to dispensaries, it was so exciting. But I think I like the small, mid-sized shops where you do get some personal attention, where they have a good variety of high-quality flower. But I went into this shop. It's interesting. This is a good friend of mine, and we're going to start up a dispensary together. But he managed this shop called The Green Solutions. It was I think it might still be like the biggest chain in Colorado.
Absolutely, I've been there before.
But I remember walking in this shop. It used to be like a former McDonald's. It was interesting how they built it out. It was actually pretty cool. But they had a long ass line, and they had the little like event tape thing. But they were so efficient with it. Like they would basically walk you, have somebody one-on-one attention, walking you through their whole little setup to the register. And like you didn't feel rushed, but you didn't have to wait long. I mean, you kind of low key felt like, okay, there's a long ass line behind me. I think I need to make a decision. So you're not going to be sitting there for 20, 30 minutes lingering.
You maybe can't do the constant just like,
Like, can I look at this for like 30 minutes and think about it?
I think maybe I'll take one of the, no, not that. Yeah, that one. Yeah, no,
But I mean, some states don't allow you to like smell the flower.
Mm-hmm.
Some states require you to like look at shit through a jar.
Yep.
So I don't appreciate it when I don't get to smell it. Like I can get it. You don't want everybody touching your shit.
Mm-hmm.
But like, can you get a good look? Can you get a good smell? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think back to the days of like early Colorado legalization where you had giant jars of weed that people with chopsticks were pulling out of, and the consumer access to what does cannabis look like is just a little bit different.
Yeah.
Jordan, question for you. Have you been in a dispensary in a legal state?
Yes, yeah, I've taken a few trips to Las Vegas for work.
Okay.
And I've taken for fun to Denver one.
Do you have any standout dispensary trips or places where you felt cared for?
Yeah, definitely I can't remember the name of it, but in Denver it was the classic just storefront, just a latch door that then you walk downstairs through another door. And then it was like the Apple store of cannabis. It was like everything was white on like pedestals with like clear, like the tops of the cases were full like magnifying.
Okay,
like it was
totally.
like it was pretty bougie and boutiquey, and like all the people there working were very let's ask questions. Like kind of what your experience was is like, let's talk about what you've liked. What are you going for? And I found the experience not intimidating, not overwhelming, but more just like, honestly, I'm just here to like, look, I'm gonna buy, but I would like to just, I'm a classic Midwest shopper like that. I'm like, oh no, I'm good, thank you. I'll just enjoy myself. And then something that tickles my fancy, then I'll like ask more questions about it. But the people were very, I would say appropriately,
yeah, there's
intrusive.
a happy middle ground where like, I don't want you to ask me like where I'm going. Like, don't ask me about my whole day and be like, oh, well, this is the perfect cannabis for Red Rocks, and this is what I like. I prefer the ask me just enough questions to help me find the thing that I'm looking for. But which I've also had the opposite of. I went to a dispensary in Illinois. I won't say the name specifically, but I was asking questions about the product, and he's like, I don't know. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, not buying that because I've never seen someone less interested in.
I would rather have somebody just straight up look at me and say, I don't know, than some douchebag just like spout some nonsense that he like heard somebody say, months before that is not even like accurate.
This is the greasiest terms, dude.
Yeah, bro, it's so gas. Like, I just, I would rather have a transparent, like, granted, then you probably shouldn't be working there. Like, if you're like, I don't know. Then you're like, maybe you're not in the right either motivated mind space to learn, or you just don't have the chutzpah.
I will say there's sometimes when I'm in the mindset when I go into dispensary, and when that guy is or the person you're working with is sort of like the dealer in Pineapple Express of like, oh, this is like the Snickle Fritz had a baby with the like. Sometimes I am in the mood for that, but I agree. As we get more commercials, we get more Shopify'd. If I'm just going in to grab a quick product, man, I don't need your whole life story.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to take a short break here. When we get back, we got an interview with Jason Tarasek of Vicente. And then after that, we'll be back with the high note, ending out our week, maybe taking a couple hits and sharing what we've been thinking about. We'll be right back. Ever felt like running a cannabis business means running in circles just to get basic banking? Union Bank and Trust gets it. They've been helping cannabis businesses for over 10 years, solving problems like securing accounts, managing cash flow, and navigating regulations. No more jumping through hoops, no more runarounds. Just straightforward banking solutions built on trust, integrity, and performance. Check out unionbankandtrust.com today. That's unionbankandtrust.com. Hey, Kale.
Hey, what's going on, Tanner?
Nothing much. So we're here with Kale from Seed and Sesh. Super excited to be chatting with you today. Kale, I'm looking for something to do on Tuesday nights. Have any ideas for me?
Well, Tuesday nights on Payne Avenue are normally pretty quiet, but we do have home grower meetup nights on Tuesday nights. So, we have our little community of home growers out here, and when we opened the store, I realized there are a lot of people out here who have been growing a lot longer than me, and there's a lot of people who are looking to get into it, and so we wanted to just create a space where people could come and talk about their home grow and dispel some myths, and maybe I had people bring in compost for other folks, and
Cool.
It's a lot of fun. It's Tuesday nights, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Bring your own flower if you'd like. We encourage people to enjoy their flower and share their flower outside, but we always have events. We're looking to start getting some more classes rolling on Tuesday nights because people are looking to get just more information and more interactive stuff going on. So
Cool.
Yeah.
So if I'm a grower, I should come on down to these events?
Oh, absolutely. Even if you're not a grower, but you're like curious about growing, or maybe somebody gave you a plant and it's in your window and you want to figure out how to like not kill it. Maybe you don't really want to grow like super big weed and you don't want to invest a bunch of money, but just the idea of it's really fun. Like I have folks who just like to make edibles, and they come down and they get to learn about how to make their edibles better and things like that. So it's turned into a really cool community. There's a lot of different folks that come out. So
And remind me, where can people find Seed and Sesh?
so you can find us on Instagram at DD, that's like Dabbler Depot, Seed and Sesh. Also, you can find us at ddseedandsesh.com. And you can just stop down by the shop. We're at 949 or 951 Payne Avenue. They're right next to each other. You can't miss us. We're right across the street from Brunson's.
Sounds like a fun time. You know where I'll be on Tuesday.
All right,
And
we'll
you
see
should
you
be there too.
Absolutely. We'll see you there.
And we're back. We're sitting here today with counsel at Vicente, Jason Tarasek. Jason, welcome to the studio.
Hi, Tanner. Hello, world.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here. You're someone that I've been talking to in the Minnesota cannabis industry for a long time, like going back to 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to have you here.
It's like the ice age in cannabis.
Right?
Yes.
The before times of a lot of what we're dealing with today, but yet not too different than how it looks today as well.
Yeah, not yet.
So I'd love to hear a little bit, just to sort of catch people up. What brought you to cannabis in Minnesota?
Yes. I'm trying to make this not a 20-minute answer.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Well, so you went to college in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
You went to law school in California.
Yeah.
Did you?
That's a good basis to start. So I went to UW-Madison, right? First of all, I went to 12 years of Catholic school where I
Okay.
had no interaction with cannabis whatsoever. I was a very good boy.
Okay.
Moving to the dorms at UW-Madison, you get introduced to cannabis immediately. I was around it, of course, throughout my college experience. And then I studied abroad in Germany, relatively near Amsterdam, which, need I say more?
For sure.
And then, of course, went to law school out in San Francisco, not just California, in San Francisco. So I was around places that were very tolerant with cannabis.
Yeah.
I was in California as they rolled out their medical cannabis program.
Okay, for
which
sure.
was extremely lax at the beginning. It's been tightened up a bit now. But, San Francisco, anything goes in San Francisco generally, but particularly with marijuana. And then I moved back here in 2005. I had lived here for a stretch in the late 90s as a newspaper reporter. And I was kind of struck by where things were here. It seemed a little odd, incongruent with our state's liberal leanings.
Yeah.
And just kind of kept my eye on it, and certainly was following the legalization fights throughout the country. And I knew it would come here eventually. And I thought, let me see what I can do about that.
Very cool. Yeah, so you started working with a national organization, the Marijuana Policy Project. That was an early time where Minnesota wasn't necessarily on the map, if you will, when it comes to federal legalization. There was a lot of effort being put into, Colorado, Oregon had sort of switched over, but we were seeing a lot of emphasis put on California and other states that sort of had that cannabis culture a little bit more developed.
Yep.
What was it like being here in Minnesota and having that national plug-in?
Oh, God. It was a blessing. So 2016, I had always been kind of politics adjacent, never really worked in politics necessarily. I suppose I still am politics adjacent. But the election of Donald Trump, I guess, convinced me to get off the couch and start investing
for sure.
myself a little more. And I started, my first foray was working a little bit for a Minneapolis City Council members election, did some door knocking. and he won, and it was kind of an upset, and that was exciting and fun. And I realized it does not take a lot to get involved, right? Basically,
sure.
raise your hand. Are you willing to do some work? Come on in. You can be the president of the volunteers, you know? So in 2018, I was anticipating a blue wave, at least at the legislative level here in Minnesota. And legislator Mike Freiberg had introduced, several legislators had introduced legalization bills in the prior session, which had gone nowhere because the Republicans were controlling both chambers. And I thought, well, maybe the House might have an opportunity to take control and we might get a little traction here. So I reached out to Mike Freiberg before the election, and he said, sure, I'll reintroduce that. And suddenly Senator Melissa Lopez Franzen was calling me and saying, I will be your Senate author. And I thought, well, this is easy. Here we go, right? I had been on the job for, I don't know, a few weeks, right? And then my friend, Heather Azzi, who had been the Marijuana Policy Project lobbyist in Minnesota and spearheaded our effort to legalize medical cannabis here, she moved to Colorado. And she suggested that I become MPP's lobbyist here. And I thought, well, that's a huge compliment since I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. But, you know, it paid $0, so it was an easy decision for them.
Yeah, for sure. But it was so cool having. So I remember Marcus, John, Jess Hansen, who's now in the legislature. We had an event looking at like what would a model bill look like in Minnesota. And when we heard MPP was coming, I was like, oh, shit, like, this is really cool seeing national interest being put on Minnesota, even if it's an unpaid gig of someone here.
I think I remember that meeting. Was that Northeast Minneapolis?
It was, yeah.
And I was super intimidated because I was the new guy, right? And the people you all mentioned, Marcus, John, Jess, Ollie Steinberg, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the OGs, really, of the legalization movement. And I did not want to be perceived as someone trying to displace them. I was hoping to help them. And Maren Schroeder, we got to give props to
another
Maren.
one.
And I hope I succeeded in that. But I felt a lot of eyes on me there and certainly did my best to form coalitions, right? And so, you know, Layli Fatahi and Laura Munn Ginsburg and I founded Minnesotans for Responsible Marijuana Regulation, and we tried to build a big tent, right? Try to get all these people maybe working in disparate paths together and try to organize a movement of sorts. And Layli and Laura come from a political organizing background, right? They run campaigns, and they basically treated it like a campaign.
Yeah.
That was really smart. I think it was effective. And, you know, we did what we could to push it forward.
Very cool. Yeah, so Murmur was a really cool organization. You had, like, St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter. You had Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry coming on board to say, yeah, we agree that there needs to be a sensible and responsible approach to cannabis in Minnesota. I mean, you were so spot on that we had a lot of activists in the state that weren't necessarily working in tandem with each other. A lot of maybe cross collaboration, but not that big tent organization. What was it like starting that up in Minnesota?
Well, you know, it took a while to learn the players, learn what had been done. Like I say, I was not trying to redo anything. I was just trying to get people organized and work together. And it wasn't always obvious, like who were allies. And there's a lot of big. Tanner, this may come as a shock to you. There are a lot of big egos in this space. And learning that, like, who's friends, who hates each other, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Things like that.
And so much of it comes down to, like, legacy relationships that existed even prior to the now, like, out and open organizations that are today that continue to sort of divide who's working towards what at the legislature. But Murmur was a really cool organization because I think, at least in Minnesota, that felt like the first time where you had, you know, the Minnesota Campaign for Full Legalization with Marcus was a part of. You had Sensible with Marin. You had Oliver. You had so many organizations coming together to say, this is the ship that we're going to sail. Could you feel internally that momentum starting to build, or what was that like?
Yes. Yeah, Curtis Hanna. We also.
Oh, another one. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for saying that.
I love Kurt. I'm glad he's starting to get the recognition he deserves. He works his butt off.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, uncovers Nixon talking about how the war on drugs was all built on a lie.
Totally. We're talking later in the episode about the changes here in Minnesota about perhaps medical psychedelics and all of that, drug paraphernalia. Like, yeah, Curtis is a huge activist.
Yeah, I could feel that coalesce. And once, you know, the legislature in particular, I think, like having one or two voices to listen to rather than 30.
Yeah.
And that exists in all forms, by the way, to the extent you're trying to form a lobbying campaign. If you can coalesce and designate one person as your spokesperson, that's much more efficient and effective. And frankly, I was aware that I was using my privilege, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would wear a suit to go lobby. And I was trying to do that justice, because I recognize I wasn't always the person people expected to see when they heard they were taking a meeting with an activist. But I think that worked to my benefit and to the movement's benefit.
Absolutely. Yeah, going back to when Minnesota first decriminalized back in the 70s, there was Star Tribune articles that talk about how it wasn't like the liberal senators that were going and pushing for it. They got the most conservative members that supported it to be the people that carried the bill, because that's how you politic, It's
And 2019, not all Democrats were in favor of legalization.
Oh yeah.
And this probably is not a big secret, but had the pot parties not qualified for major party status, we might still be waiting.
Yeah.
That might have been one of the primary motivators for the DFL to legalize. You put those guys out of business, you don't have to worry about losing close races if they're going to run a candidate in a swing race.
Yeah. There were
Job
conversations.
one.
Yeah, just like hearing about like that inner party politicking of the grassroots party, which we both know is a few really well committed activists, but nothing like the party infrastructure of the DFL. But seeing these two parties connecting and creating like what does future policy look like was fascinating times in Minnesota.
Yeah, I've said this before, but whatever benevolent impulse the DFL may have had to legalize cannabis, the number one motivator, in my opinion, I don't think they'll ever admit this, was the fact that the pot parties put their ability to win majorities in the legislature in jeopardy. And it worked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So fast forwarding to today, we're in now a world where hemp-derived edibles were formally, structurally legalized. We had adult use pass across along with an amendment bill in this legislature. What kind of stuff are you working on today? We've sort of transitioned from strictly activism to now helping businesses to perhaps open in the future. What does that look like here in Minnesota?
Yeah, we're still in a limbo period, of course, as you know. My watch is attached to my phone, so I'm getting text messages. People are getting deficiency notices, as you know.
Yeah,
we were talking about
absolutely.
that a little bit before we went on air. Unfortunately, it's nothing serious so far that I've seen, but it's been mostly, we can't read your driver's license. Can you send us another copy? Yeah, no problem. So I don't know if there's going to be like another wave of deficiencies that are harsher, perhaps. But that's the work now, preparing people to stand up a business. And frankly, a lot of the day-to-day sort of stuff is elsewhere. Fortunately, I'm with a national cannabis firm now where I'm not only focused on Minnesota. So there are things happening on cannabis elsewhere. I'm a litigator, so I can help with the litigation team no matter where we are. But a lot of our clients have taken a step back, and they may have spent a lot of money on these applications. They're not going to spend money searching for property, certainly paying me, until their lottery ball gets pulled.
Yeah. It looks like hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have a better indication of who has that pre-approval, who's moving forward, and then maybe what the next round of lottery looks like and all that fun.
That's the party line from OCM, right? By the end of the year.
Absolutely, yeah. By the end of December 2024.
I think it'll be between Election Day and Thanksgiving. That's my prediction.
All right.
Based on nothing other than a hunch.
Yeah, totally fair. I think it was interesting seeing the deficiency notices come out and at least get that first indication of, all right, it means they've reviewed at least X number of applications. And what does that mean for all right, so we got 2 weeks for people to repair them. What is I think the reading the tea leaves has become like a full-time job.
Yeah. Perhaps that means they've gone through all of them already. Mm-hmm. That would be nice.
That would be very nice. So I want to sort of open up a little bit. You talked about how you're doing work in other states. We're in the Midwest that is constantly changing about how cannabis looks, how it's regulated, what the future of cannabis could look like in Wisconsin, the Dakotas, all of that. I wanted to chat with you a little bit about sort of what your thoughts are on what's happening in the Midwest generally. And I'm not going to be the person who says, Jason, is THCA something that I should be selling out of my store? But
Thank you.
Yeah, but the question that I do have is just, what are your thoughts on that evolution of the Wisconsin THCA industry of sorts. You know, we in Minnesota have, some would say clear, some would complain not, but I think clearer guidelines about what legal hemp products look sometimes. But in Wisconsin, I think it's relying more on what that federal interpretation is. I mean, what has it been like watching that evolve?
Well, before I talk about Wisconsin, I will get there. But, you know, I am watching, there are ballot measures in South Dakota, North Dakota, and Nebraska. All of those might, well, we have no idea what they're going to do. It's very difficult to poll on that stuff. It looks kind of bad, unfortunately, on all of those, but I'm hoping the polls are just wrong.
Okay.
So it's possible South Dakota will essentially legalize adult use cannabis again. It's possible North Dakota will do it, and it's possible Nebraska will do some medical cannabis stuff. So watching all that closely. Wisconsin, though, is definitely on my agenda because I'm from there. Number one, I'm from Milwaukee. I went to UW-Madison, and I also think, you know, they have nothing legal whatsoever, expressly anyway.
Yeah.
But there are certainly plenty of cannabis consumers in Wisconsin ready for that to change. So I went to Hemp Fest a few weeks ago in Madison, and there were plenty of hemp-derived THC beverage manufacturers there presenting their wares. Very popular. And it is sort of impliedly legal there because Wisconsin has adopted the federal 2018 Farm Bill as its hemp statute.
Yeah.
And so hemp and hemp derivatives, so long as they don't have more than 0.3% Delta-9 THC, it's legal, so long as you manufacture them in the state of Wisconsin. That's from the regulators. So that's really the only guardrail, but no testing, no labeling requirements, no adult use only requirements. So it really is just like where we were in Minnesota in 2021, where all that stuff is available, but no guardrails whatsoever around it.
Interesting. Yeah, it's been fun, if you will, watching the different states' approaches to hemp-derived edibles. Seeing states like California that act to sort of overall ban all hemp-derived edibles with THC in them. Yeah. Places like Wisconsin that rely more on the federal, perhaps looser regulations, and then places like Minnesota that do more of that state regulation of what does hemp look like here in Minnesota.
Yeah, it's just begging for some action, right? Because, you know, when I was at Hemp Fest, I asked all the hemp-derived THC beverage manufacturers, I said, if this was expressly legal through a statute like we passed in Minnesota in 2022, do you think you'd sell more? And of course the answer is yes. So perhaps we should form a coalition and see what we can do. You know, that most gerrymandered state in the country, right? But the Republicans are going to lose some seats perhaps, and perhaps be more open to legislation like that. I don't know. Maybe we don't even need to win in these seats there to move the dial a little bit. It just kind of makes business sense, and it's in the interest of public health.
Yeah, it has been interesting, you know, bringing up Kurt Hanna's name again. He was the guy who always told me, like, no, you got to lean on the Republicans. You got to not just have this be a DFL issue, but really reach across the aisle. Yeah. And it's been interesting in Florida, seeing advertisements come out in favor of their adult use bill that pitch it as like, President Trump says this is good for business. Vote for Amendment 4 or whatever be it. And that changing narrative around cannabis that I think would not have happened 5 years ago.
Yeah, I will say in Minnesota, having worked on this since 2018, it's been very interesting to watch how quickly the Republicans in the legislature here have pivoted on cannabis. Now that it's legal, they will happily take meetings with me because, hey, let's create some jobs. Let's add to our tax base of our local governments. I thought, well, could have used a few years
call
ago.
Out specific. No, I'm just kidding.
Of course not.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, there are a few leaders, Republican folks who have been outspoken for a long time that deserve some credit. Nolan West, Pat Garofalo in particular.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like to tell people that I think this is an underappreciated fact, but the Minnesota bill was the most bipartisan measure to pass across the entire country. We had more bipartisan support for that. And was it a GOP-led measure? No, of course not. But it was cool to see at least more of that conservative Republican maybe take an eye towards cannabis.
Yeah, the libertarian Republicans.
Yeah.
Totally fine with this, right? So you got to figure out who those people are.
Yeah, interesting. Well, so it's been crazy watching cannabis shift just over the last couple of years, especially since 2018, as that all has been a whirlwind. What kind of stuff are you watching as we move into the future of cannabis? Obviously, we're watching licensure in Minnesota, seeing how that ends up rolling out. What kind of other things are you keeping your eye on?
Oh, the tribes, man. They are
Oh,
the
okay, for
absolute
sure.
wild card. It's been interesting I'm learning a little bit about what's happening now, and without disclosing too much, there is movement on the compacts, finally.
Okay.
I'll let you draw your own conclusions, but some of the more likely candidates will probably be doing something pretty soon.
Very cool.
And that is a difference maker, right? To the extent that some of them may soon be allowed to open dispensaries off tribal land anywhere, across the street from this recording location. I mean,
Totally.
that would be a big deal.
Yeah.
They will be the only game in town, obviously, for weeks or months.
Yeah, I was in Moorhead a couple weeks ago and saw the JL Beer building that is now owned by White Earth and could be a future off-site dispensary not too far in the future.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be a temporary thing. They're going to be in it for the long term. And it'll be a very interesting dynamic to see how their operations interplay with OCM licensees, right? Because there's a little tension there. I have no predictions. And frankly, the tribes are getting more active in Wisconsin, too. Turning back to them, there is a coalition of tribes in Wisconsin looking to legalize adult use cannabis on tribal land. That would certainly start a conversation there, if nothing else.
Yeah, that would be very interesting, especially because in Minnesota, we saw like medical cannabis we move forward before adult use, but we didn't see widespread adult use tribal legalization until Minnesota moved forward. It would be interesting to see tribes in Wisconsin really sort of lean into that sovereignty right of stuff.
Yeah, there's something called the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association, actually headquartered just outside of Madison, gaining in power, becoming more prominent in the space. I think this might just continue to grow. It'll be cool to watch. And, all the attention in Minnesota in particular is around adult use cannabis for obvious reasons. But the hemp-derived THC space, in particular with beverages, I mean, that is not going to slow down either. It is just continuing to flourish. We have businesses that got their start here in Minnesota that are now selling in Texas and California and Florida and doing very, very well. And they're not the only ones, of course, but that has been fascinating to watch that sector explode.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. And I think Minnesota offers a unique model where we didn't get rid of hemp-derived when we legalized, but we created a structure to sort of tie it into what is the definition of cannabis? Well, it's sort of all of this.
Yeah. We left the smokables.
For sure.
On the adult use side. That's sort of the grand compromise. And, our economist, I haven't been able to say that for very long. Vicente has an economist on staff. He thinks the smokables will be at least 60 to 65% of the market here.
Okay.
So there's plenty of room for everybody to prosper. But the hemp-derived THC beverages, I say this all the time in interviews, but millennials don't drink alcohol like other generations do. And Molson Coors, Budweiser, it's not like they're not paying attention to that, right? So when one of those big guys jumps in, and when you start seeing them on the shelves at Target, for example, that will be a seismic moment. It's coming.
Absolutely.
It's coming.
Yeah, I think the cannabis company that I've been watching is Wild, Wild Edibles, because they have a huge market share in legalized states, but now also moving to hemp-derived edibles could be an interesting shift as they move nationwide.
100%. Yeah. It's so much easier, right? You have access to interstate commerce.
Yeah.
You can access banking, insurance products, all sorts of things that adult use cannabis businesses just don't have access to.
Yeah. Take a credit card, send it through the mail, shows up at someone's house. Not the adult use industry that I think we all became used to, but very quickly becoming the norm for hemp-derived.
Yeah. So not to throw adult use cannabis completely under the rug, I will say, you asked me what I'm looking forward to. Of course, the rescheduling decision.
Yeah.
If it ever happens. Hopefully December. I don't know what more needs to happen, but I feel like it will happen, and that instantly will make all of our clients much more profitable because a lot of these companies have a 70 to 80% actual tax rate. That is just obscene.
And just for people who maybe know a little bit, it's a 280E
Yes.
exemption that you're talking about.
Correct.
Where
Thank you.
they're not allowed to write off any of their business expenses because
Yes.
what they're doing is federally illegal. But Schedule 3, suddenly you can.
Right. Exactly. So rescheduling is largely symbolic, except for that.
Yeah.
At least for my business clients, right? And you got businesses in California, you got high tax rates, you have burdensome regulation, then you got this 280E problem. How on earth do you compete with the illicit market in a state where it's probably the greatest place on earth to grow weed outside? So California is ready for that.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, Jason, I appreciate you coming in, chatting a little bit more about Minnesota, but also things going on across the entire country. I think very quickly the story is going to go from what's happening of cannabis here in the state to what is this federal momentum building around cannabis. And I'm excited to see, be it hemp, be it adult use, how that continues to evolve. For people that want to get in touch with you, how would you recommend that they reach out?
I can give my cell phone.
Okay.
Because my name is so hard to spell. 612-961-8112. You can just call me.
Sweet. We'll put that down in the show notes if people want to give a call and chat a little bit more about their business or what the future of cannabis looks like.
Thank you, Tanner.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming in today. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to see where our industry continues to go in the future.
Me too.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank
We'll be right back.
Dabbler Depot's Seed and Sesh is the ultimate one-stop shop for all types of cannabis enthusiasts. From grow equipment, including seeds, tents, and lights, to all kinds of Minnesota-grown infused beverages and edibles, Seed and Sesh is a one-of-a-kind cannabis experience. It is also home of the Dabbler Studio, which is where this very podcast is recorded every Friday afternoon. You can also join us every Tuesday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. for our home grower meetup, where you can share in the joys of cannabis cultivation with like-minded folks from right here in the Twin Cities. Find Seed and Sesh at 951 Payne Avenue in St. Paul's East Side neighborhood. Dabbler Depot's Seed and Sesh. Growing plants, growing community.
Ready to kick off your home grow? We've got the perfect hookup for you. MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. They've got everything from fast flowering strains to unique hybrids, all ready for growing in Minnesota. And guess what? Our listeners get an exclusive deal. Use the code NL10 for a 10% discount on your entire order. Don't miss out and get started with the best seeds. Start your growth strong with MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Remember, NL10 for 10% off at MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Grab your seeds today. We're back. Another episode of Northern Lights. We've talked about the news. We've done the interview. Now it's time for our last part. Favorite way to wrap up the week. It is the high note. Woot, woot, woot. This is the part where we maybe step out of the studio a little bit beforehand. We come on back and we just chat about what's going on. What are we dealing with this week? What are the things that are on our mind? Perhaps while we're rolling a J, packing a Puffco, whatever be it. Who wants to start us off this week? Marcus, have you been having some high notes? I know you are on this a break, if you will, from cannabis, but what have you been thinking about this week?
Well, I've been thinking about, the last time I was here, I was watching y'all smoke, and I was smelling it too, and I do miss it a lot.
How has your break been, man?
It's been good. For the most part, it's been easy. The first couple months, my dreams were extremely intense.
Okay.
And that was wild.
Yeah,
I still have potent dreams now, but I'm looking forward to the day when I can smoke again. But I'm going to be a much more conscious consumer. Yeah, I'm going to cherish it. But I was thinking on the way here, like, after 365 days of not smoking, like, what is that going to do to my tolerance?
For reals. We've all taken like a break, like a week tolerance break, a couple days, but yeah, an entire year. And we're going to get you like the fattest dab when you start doing it again, right? Just totally flood that endocannabinoid system.
Yeah, that's going to be a trip.
Let's just have him jump off the 100-foot cliff.
Yeah. Yep. I was out of the country one time for about a week and just didn't really have access to cannabis while I was there. There was definitely cannabis, but I didn't have a ton of access to it. And came on back, ripped a fat dab, and that week was a tolerance break. Now imagine a year.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
So aside from more intense dreams, have there been other maybe changes that you didn't foresee when you, because you talked about this back last season. People at the end of the season probably heard you talk about taking this break. Other things that have stood out over the past couple of months?
I mean, I've saved money. I've saved quite a bit of money.
There you go.
I mean, my house doesn't smell like smoke, which I like the smell of cannabis smoke, especially because I generally do glass, so I don't have paper smells and shit.
You don't have just like the burnt.
Yeah,
fire.
but yeah, I don't notice much else.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard on the hard days not to smoke. Like there's certain days when smoking would take the edge off, or certain nights where I'm restless. Like, damn, this would help me sleep better.
I like to say it just sands off the corners.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It doesn't. Yeah, it just sands down the edges. Yeah.
yeah.
My dad used to always tell this joke of, a bunch of deadheads were at the concert and they ran out of weed and they all looked at each other and said, "What's this terrible music?" And I really like the Grateful Dead, so I didn't like that joke. But have you noticed any changes in like music or TV shows that maybe were like a perfect stoned activity, but now sober have been just less your thing?
I mean, I think cannabis makes most things nicer.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm an expert at enjoying life, so
That's true.
yeah, I'm
That's
good.
fair. That's
Yeah.
super fair.
And if I really need something, I'll take some mushrooms.
There we go.
I mean, that fucking moon last night,
Oh, yeah, that full moon was intense.
It's like
Yeah.
the sun.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
man, I went on a bike ride and I took a dose on the way there, and on the way back, the moon was like low on the horizon. It was so yellow.
Wow.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, and we got a ton of exposure to the moon during the day yesterday. Like, it was cool
Yeah.
to be driving around and be like, oh, there's the moon just chilling.
Yeah, and bonfires, So I have other ways to enjoy myself.
I take it, man. I take
But
it.
I would never do this again.
Okay. All right. Fair. There we go. It will be a one and done kind of thing of the,
Yeah.
well,
I'm just
That's
testing
it.
myself, because I've been a chronic smoker for 26 years. So this is the longest I've gone without smoking in all those years. I don't think I ever went more than 2 weeks.
first time this millennia.
Yeah. Last time in this lifetime.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Jordan, what have you been thinking about this week? What is your high note, if you will?
It's more of a recommendation. Trying to stay relevant,
Okay,
topical.
totally.
With the trends these days. However, I in an effort to reduce my casual drinking, my plan has been, when my wife and I are watching reality TV, I'll be like, all right, dear, I'm just gonna step outside, gonna get myself level real quick before we watch this reality television. And I know reality TV is a pretty divisive thing, and I used to hate reality TV so much, but then I realized, like, let's stop looking at it as like a entertainment thing. Oh, I think my camera just stopped. Yep. Whatever. We'll go audio. It's less of a entertainment thing and more of like a anthropology, like a sociology study, just observing these silly little primates and these silly little very extreme circumstances. So all that to be said, I've been smoking and watching The Golden Bachelorette with my wife.
There we go.
And I've never been a Bachelorette fan. I don't know. But there's something different about this show. And it's like, I think it's because all these people have no time or patience for bullshit, nonsense, drama. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it's like legitimately, genuinely good people with good intentions, just being good to each other. It's like it's like a love version of Great British Baking Show, It's just feel good.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's less of a thought, more of a recommendation. If you're needing to see, decent people being decent with each other, Golden Bachelorette this season's pretty good.
And so a question for you. Are you a watcher of the other Bachelor franchises?
No, only the Golden Bachelor,
Okay.
the predecessor of this
All right.
of this season. So yeah, last season the Golden Bachelor is like a mid-60s guy, widower.
So I started dating my wife, then girlfriend, then whatever, years ago. Started watching The Bachelor, Bachelorette, Bachelor in Paradise around the same time, all of the series. And I have many thoughts on it. Daisy, if you're out there, she was on The Bachelor 2 seasons ago. She's from Minnesota. We'd love to have you on the podcast. But that set aside, I think The Golden Bachelor and The Golden Bachelorette is too sad for me to watch. It is so focused on, well, life since my partner died has just been really tough. And I get stoned and I watch this to just like check out and see people shout at each other. It's almost too sentimental for me.
Right. I get that. And like, we definitely have like the tissues on the coffee table ready to go. Cause it's like, oh my God, these people have full life stories, and you really do get invested in them, but it's like, you can't have the joy and happiness without the, sadness and despair here and there. So it's like, it's a little balance in life.
I love it.
Recommendation, Golden Bachelorette.
There we go.
I mean, I might have to check that out. I'm intrigued.
It's just nice. It's just nice.
It's worth watching because if you stop watching it, no harm to your life. And if you start watching it, no harm to your life. It's just one of those fun things to have on, if you will.
What about you?
Oh, well, so guys, I talked on the show a couple weeks ago about loving Minnesota branded cannabis products. Just like really getting into things that are like Minnesota essence, but also cannabis. It's my two favorite things coming together.
Hey.
I had the opportunity to pick up a jar of some new concentrates, some ope solventless. Love some good ope. I was trying to think of like, how do I talk about local concentrates without just doing what I did last time, which is saying, sick jar, dude. And so what I decided to do is I did a terp tasting at home. And I wrote myself a letter to read on the podcast to describe what this is. Now, I was pretty stoned when I wrote this. And so I thought now is the perfect time to bring it into the studio and to read it to you. So this is my ode to ope, if you will. And we'll put a bunch of music behind this.
Yes. Well, just maybe some notes, directorial notes. Tone. What are you thinking? Just like soft
very
strings.
Yeah, like sentimental. Almost.
Okay. Melancholy or hopeful?
I think hopeful, optimistic, and almost uplifting. Yeah, and feel free to give
I
that
see it?
But still,
absolutely feel free to open up. Feel free to give it a smell. I know you're not dabbing, but you can get those chirps
can
through
see
your
a
nose.
smell.
Get a little of that aroma from it, and it has a strong aroma, I would say. That's some good ASMR there. Wow. What does it sound like to smell terps?
And only my right nostril is working right now.
Okay, there we go. What does your right nostril think?
Fantastic.
There we go. Well, so here is what my nostrils, mouth, and brain thought. I got home, kicked off my shoes, and reached for a chilled jar of ope solventless pineapples in space waiting patiently in my fridge. The jar was a perfect blend of minimalism and Minnesota charm, clean, lined with a bold, familiar vibe that brought to mind the crisp fall mornings up north. You get that purple, the greens. It's beautiful. The kind where you can almost smell the leaves turning. Popping open the lid released a wave of rich, sweet pineapple funk that my nose felt with full force. It was mouth-wateringly sweet, unapologetically funky, and utterly delicious, like a fresh pineapple candied in the finest of rottenness. Now, with anticipation buzzing, I scooped a generous dollop, if you will, into my Puffco. Watched the rosin glisten as it started to heat up and bubble. I stepped outside, ready for a well-earned evening of relaxation. And as the chamber warmed and the vapors swirled, the flavor followed the scent almost exactly. Sweet pineapple front and center, giving way to a dank, grounding funk in the exhale. It was like taking a tropical vacation without even leaving Minnesota. The terps danced across my tongue, each inhale with a warm sip of herbal pineapple tea, soothing in the autumnal breeze nipping in my face. Now, the high drifted in slowly, soft and unassuming, almost like a fog rolling across an autumnal lake. I could feel my mind loosening, the knots of stress unraveling, slipping away like the vapor rising off into the air. The day's weight disappeared, dissolving into nothingness. Now, with a head buzz settled in, I pulled out my laptop and fired up Trading Card Game Shop Simulator. Have you heard of this before? Trading Card Game Shop Simulator. It's a game where you run a trading card game shop. Now, there was something oddly satisfying about opening the endless packs of virtual cards, assembling my collections, and curating my dream store while under the influence of pineapples in space. As the simulated world of foil, rare, and booster packs unfolded in front of me, the mellow buzz kept me in a perfect groove. Was I watching The Bachelor? Maybe. The rhythm of the game synced beautifully with my state of mind, and I found myself lost in a quiet joy of creation. Now, time slipped away unnoticed. The high kept me wrapped in a warm and carefree blanket. I handed the laptop over to my wife to have her open a couple packs, and the coolness of the evening started to take me away, and I, just like the rosin that had melted, began to be smooth, slow, and inevitably drifting off. With a satisfying sigh, I knew that it was time to call it a night, and my mind as light as the vapor that I exhaled into the cool evening air. So that's what I think about Ope Solventless. Do you guys want to try some?
Yeah. I think also we got to get you like a children's book deal or something.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
21 plus children.
Plus.
Yeah, well, if anyone wants me to review their rosin, I'll gladly give it a taste, and who knows, maybe bring it on the show.
I mean, how could they not offer you a brand ambassador deal?
And it's so good. That's the part that killed me is I saw it on Instagram, and I was like, well, it looks good. Let's see. I opened the jar, and it's like, fuck, like that has such a strong aroma. Even though I think the flavor is a little lighter than the scent of it, it comes across so wonderfully, so sweet. Yes, also just like rotten funk. Big fan.
Jiminy Crickets.
I had my eyes closed for a lot of that. I was just kind of like rocking back and forth, listening to the what's the soft, sultry tones.
Well, we're going to start a new podcast called Tanner's Chirp Reviews. That's just going to be smooth evening podcast. You want to listen to 10, 15 minutes of someone just pack a bowl and just unwind in front of you?
What's up, cool cats and kittens? You just tuned into another episode of Tanner's Chirp Review.
Instead of, and we're back, you're going to get, and we're back.
And we are back.
And we're back.
With a gentle shoulder rub.
Well, guys, that's all we got for today. Now, Jordan, you brought a surprise into the studio that sort of ties back to a high note from past weeks. We had talked about the best French fry that you could possibly get. Mm-hmm. I think we have some pretty good fries in the studio.
We got some fries. I don't know how warm they are. These are from our neighbors right across the street in the beautiful east side of St. Paul, Brunson's Pub. They, I think, I would classify their fries. I'll give them to you, but hand-cut classic pub style fry.
Okay.
Yeah. Good seasoning, good garlic, good crisp.
I love it.
Classic, no frills, no gimmicks, just solid potato.
So we're now offering the Northern Lights experience where you go across the street, you get some fries. As you're walking back, you smoke a lot. And then you come and sit in the studio and you just get handed French fries that you just get to eat. Wow. Those look good. All right. Well, that's all we got for this week. We're going to eat some French fries and sort of hang out. But we'll be back in your feed next week. In the interim, find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Reddit, YouTube, all of that. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube. That's how you're going to get the quickest notifications when we drop new episodes, new segments. And you want to get your voice on the show? Drop it in your comments. We'll bring them right here to our studio. You got a question? We'll answer it. You got a comment? We'll share it. You want me to wear a specific shirt? Let me know, which, by the way, before we go, I talked about my trip to the beautiful city of Moorhead, going to the Dairy Queen that had the first dilly bar. I got not a dilly bar there, but I did get a shirt, and that's what we're going to leave you with today, guys. So shout out to our sponsor, Dairy Queen.
Wah, wah, wah.
Home of the Dilly Bar.
Lower, duck.
Home of the Dilly Bar. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll be back in your feed next week. Northern Lights is a Minnesota Cannabis College production. This episode was produced by me, Tanner Barris, and by Steve Eigenman and Jordan Whiff. Production assistance from Marcus Harkis, Shayna Payton, and John Bartee. Video and audio recording at the Dabbler Depot studio by Jordan Whiff. The information provided in this podcast does not, and is not intended to, constitute legal advice, but is instead for general information purposes only. No listener should act solely on the basis of information provided without first seeking advice from their own legal counsel. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Minnesota Cannabis College. Please listen responsibly.